Hi there, and welcome to the Pod, the Northwest's newest all-purpose recording studio for content creators. If you've got something to say and need a place to say it, search for podpod.uk. In all the usual social channels, give us a like and a follow, and get in touch to reserve your time to create. Right, so welcome to our next Proper Good Social Enterprise Network podcast. So today I have the honour of bringing in Melissa Taylor and Ellie Palma-Cass. So do you want to introduce yourself, Melissa?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm Melissa. I'm Community Health Building Lead, and I work on my post is hosted by Groundwork, which is a voluntary sector organisation.
And yourself, Ellie?
And I'm Ellie. I'm the founding director of Epic Hope. We are a suicide prevention organisation in Wigan, and we cover the Wigan and Leigh boroughs.
Fantastic. So we brought you both together today because obviously you both work very closely. Do you want to talk a bit more about the work then that you've been doing over the last few years and how you both work closely together? Because I know you've got a few events and a few things you've been involved in. So it'd be just nice to... So what is your relationship of how you work closely?
Yeah, so shall I start?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll briefly talk about community health building, which is, it's titled The Project, but it's really more a way of working, particularly around social prescribing pathways. But my role is sort of that connection between voluntary sector organisations on the ground and our health partners, so social prescribers, community link workers, care coordinators, job coaches, anybody that I class as a travel agent, and then the destinations of the voluntary sector organisations. So I think myself and Ellie, we actually connected at a Proper Good network event. That was the first time we met each other, wasn't it? So my role is very much about connecting and getting to know the organisations on the ground, and finding out what's going on, and then identifying where the gaps are and sort of working together in collaboration. So I think that's kind of how we've come together, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. It was really good when I first met Melissa, because I didn't even know those things existed, the Proper Good Connect meetings, and I didn't know anything about that sector locally, because I'd always worked in international charity, and so it was, you're in a different area completely. So finding out about local community and all the things that were available through the council and through Proper Good blew my mind. And I'd met Tracy Wormolt, and she told me about the meetings, so I went along and I thought, what is this all about? This is so exciting. Met Melissa at the very first one, and she invited me to these coffee and connects. What are the
Keeping Connected brews. Yeah.
And when you go to those, you meet people from all different organisations, don't you? People who are just setting up, people who are established, and it's through that you realise how you can, which I'm massive about, like really passionate about, Anna, collaboration and how people can support each other. And so we've really connected because of that, haven't we? We've really worked together a lot. I find Melissa doesn't realise what a great support she is to people through the job that she does. Because in this game, when you're just setting out, and we are in the first 14, 15 months of Epic Hope, that support is massively needed as well. So it's been wonderful for us to know Melissa and the people that we've met, in Melissa, through Groundwork, and through the council, and through yourselves.
It's those connections, isn't it?
Definitely.
It's
So how have you seen it change then? So you've been in, how long is it?
2 years now.
So how have you seen it change then in the 2 years? Because it feels like there's more connectedness going on.
It does. I mean, obviously we were coming out of COVID and things had changed and ways of working had changed, and I kept hearing a lot about where we used to have sort of a thriving voluntary sector, and things had gone a little bit by the wayside. But I think the key thing that I heard was that people wanted more opportunities to connect. They wanted to understand what was going on around Wigan, and it is a minefield. I mean, there's so many fantastic organisations, and the benefit of voluntary sector is that we're sort of quite reactive. We bend and flex to meet the needs of the community. We're able to do that. So it's really hard to keep a track of what's out there, what the offer is. So I think when I came into post, it felt, it still is, you know, it's not perfect, but things didn't feel joined up, and there was a lot of brilliant stuff, but nobody really knew what was going on. And I think, and I'm not saying it's down to me, it's partnership working for sure, but I think there seems to be a better understanding now of what's out there, and people do feel a little bit more connected. And as you said, through the Keeping Connected brews, that's a space for people where there's no agenda, but it's actually just a space for organisations to come together, whether that's voluntary sector, whether that's our, you know, colleagues in the health sector, the council, but it's that space just to come and get to know each other, build relationships, and get to really understand the work that we're all doing. And I think that's really important, and that feels like quite a shift, because now we've got some really good sort of understanding of each other. Then the collaboration, as Ellie said, that's almost a given, because people want to work together, so that there feels to be more of that now. I think,
because it's always been one of my frustrations, obviously, over the years with the social enterprise sector, that, or not necessarily with the social enterprises, but with, you know, people looking at the sector, because you think about, we say 250-ish social enterprises in the borough, which we reckon at last count certainly 52%, certainly more than half, probably more so now, are health and social care led, and people who you will be supporting. But we know a lot of those groups, and I think I've said this before, probably turn over less than, say, 20,000. A lot of those individuals have a second job. A lot of them probably heavily rely on grant funding. And there's always been that feeling that we know the need has been there. You know, we've seen that with many groups in the past. You know, I've mentioned in previous podcasts about things like the men's sheds back in the day, and the demand that just overweighed the service. But I've always felt sometimes, you know, public sector, private sector partners, whatever, sometimes see these groups as being so small, and maybe don't quite see the value of the collaboration. And I've seen it a few times happen, sometimes recently even, worse, was almost like a feeling of, should groups kind of almost like be swallowed up into some bigger organisations kind of thing. And for me, that's just losing some of that entrepreneurial spirit these groups have had. There's a better way of working together, because I can understand from people's point of view that if there's say 100 social enterprises supporting, say, mental well-being, that clearly that's a lot of it. Maybe people feel like it's a lot of competition, and there's a lot of, you know, how do you support that? There's not a lot of money going around. And I always get nervous when people feel like, well, maybe we don't need 100, but we just need one or two big players out there. And it's like, yeah, well, that's not right, really, because there's something about the everybody coming together and trying to find that collaborative way of doing it, whether that's funding bids. So hopefully that's going to start to happen a bit more, rather than, you know, suddenly 10 become 2 and you end up with, say, 2 or 3 big companies doing it in Wigan, and that means all these, you know, more neighbourhood based ones seem to. So hopefully this collaborative one starts to see that, and people will commission because of partnerships, and rather than it's just something I've noticed over the last 12 months, that there's always that feeling of it's I can see with people's point of view, there's a lot of groups out there, and we clearly can't support everybody, and do we just need, you know, shorten but it's like,
would you not look at the story though behind what is the reason for a group? What is the reason for an organisation being set up? There'll be a different story behind each one. And so, for instance, and I know some organisations why they've been opened, and for instance, Epic Hope. Well, Epic Hope, we set it up because Wigan has the highest rate of suicides in the whole of England and Wales. We have done so much research, and the fact of the matter is that people are still dying from suicide. It's not just an issue with mental illness. Personally, I believe it's the physical side as well, as you know, with brain injury and suicide. But also, I am passionate about this town, and I don't want to keep seeing people dying by suicide. So behind Epic Hope, there is this absolute passion to save lives. And also we have 3 areas that we work in. We have the harbours, we have the Hope circuits, where we actually go out to where people are, who go and take the lives, and we have our training, and we're the only people that deliver that gold standard world leading training in the whole of Wigan and Leigh. Nobody else does that. So even though you've got the big suicide prevention organisations, they don't love Wigan the way we love Wigan. So we can offer that to Wigan. People know that when they come to Epic Hope that we care about them, and it wasn't even about money. So yeah, we do need money to keep going, but people, when they're raising money for us and when we're trying to get money to do projects, they know it's because we care about the people in Wigan. And so looking at these maybe 250 organisations, Melissa and I, we do meet these people that run these organisations, and we see their passion to help the people in Wigan. You might get a couple of organisations that maybe don't, and there might be someone who is in it for money. Maybe that will peter out. But I believe that when you know somebody's doing it for a thorough reason and they want to make a difference, and in our case we want to save lives, that has to be looked at. And I think the authorities and the council and the local NHS and Greater Manchester Mental Health Service, when they see that you're in it for the long haul, and you're not, it's not an easy thing to do running an organisation, but when you're in it for the long haul and you're not doing it because it's for the money, they see what matters, don't they? Yeah. And I think those are things that have to be considered.
And this
Absolutely.
is something we've been looking at now, which is that how do we, we want to, those groups out there that you mentioned, the lived experience, the knowledge, or the phraseology, I know it's lived experience, people use different terminologies, etc. these days, but that can be lost. But you're right, we've all kind of had our own enterprises, and it is hard to run. And I know one of the conversations has been about we can't lose that, but what then, so let's say from our side, for example, and from Melissa's side, what is that stuff then that we can do, whether that's awareness raising, whether that's supporting with funding bids, or whether that's just like you mentioned before, the connected, the events, because that is a lot of stuff that you as an entrepreneur don't have time to do. So I think that's what I like about it, is that the bit that we can kind of do behind the scenes, which is enabling you to connect, and it just because when you're an entrepreneur, you've got that passion, but you've got 10 other jobs to do as well, whether that's your financial accounting, you've got funding to bids in. Wouldn't it be lovely if we all kind of didn't have to spend 3 days out of our 7-day week, because none of our enterprises are ever 5 days a week, it's always 7 days a week we work. And just to know that actually those 2 or 3 days a week we have to keep writing funding bids and focus, we'd have to do that. We could just spend 7 days a week focusing on what you guys do best, which is supporting the people out there who need it. And then, so I think a lot of that backroom support stuff, and I think it's great you mentioned about the keep it connected, because clearly, like you say, that's been funded through Groundwork, that's separate.
Totally agree with everything that you're both saying. I think for me, it's about acknowledging that the people on the grounds, like Ellie said, everyone's got a story, and there's the space for everyone. And it's really kind of nurturing that, and those stories are what bring people resilience, and it's what brings them their skills. And we should be enabling all those organisations to do what they're really good at. And like you said, Dave, it's then how can the system, and it is complex, but how can organisations around that sort of wrap around and support that, rather than squeezing everyone together. And it might be an easier option to just have 1 or 2 organisations that are commissioned, but actually, is that the best option for Wigan? Probably not, because we have got all these different diverse opportunities. So it's what support do those organisations need, and how can the system enable that to happen? So it is about connecting, it is about identifying skills, and letting those that are skilled in the engagement side and the communities do, and those that are skilled in promoting that, or working out how that's funded, let them do that, and then, like I said, it's not an easy process at all, but I think there is space for everyone. It's just hard to join it up, isn't it?
And on that note, about, because obviously one of the key things we mentioned about is obviously the training side of it, and it kind of links perfectly in terms of one of the things that I think you lead on, obviously, is the Connect 5 training.
Connect
so this
5,
seems to be
yeah.
something I know you mentioned before. So what is Connect 5? How do the sector get involved in it?
Yeah, so Connect 5, I'm going to mention it. Joe from Public Health should have been sat here today. I'm going to say
We
it.
miss you,
Just
Joe.
let me
Where are you,
down.
Joe?
Totally.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm saying that
We'll
is
put a picture on screen now while we're doing the podcast.
But she'll articulate this so much better than I can. She delivers Connect 5 training. It's her bread and butter. But basic Connect 5 training in a nutshell is enabling people to have kind of conversations around mental well-being. We're all having them every day. We probably don't even realise, and it's just giving people the confidence to open that conversation and to really talk openly and honestly. And you don't have to be a mental health expert, because we're not fixing people, we're not diagnosing, we've got a bag of tools there that can help people to help themselves, if that makes sense. So Connect 5 is a national programme. We've got some funding through Greater Manchester to actually deliver that within the voluntary sector. So it was already being delivered through our statutory partners. So as I said, Jo's a trainer and she was delivering it, sort of council staff, NHS staff. But voluntary sector are on the ground. They're there having these face-to-face conversations, and it was a no-brainer really that staff and volunteers should be accessing that training to give them the confidence or the skills. So we've got funding through Greater Manchester. We trained up a number of individuals from voluntary sector organisations, and they are running with it, and it's brilliant because there's a set content that has to be delivered. But again, as said previously, voluntary sector, we flex and we bend to meet the needs of the community, the groups that we're working with. So for example, rather than it being a half-day course where we're taking individuals into a training room and it's all very formal, it's actually they're doing the knit and natter group, they're having a conversation there, let's slot the content into it. But again, we come back to voluntary sector and the skills that they've got. The trainers that we've got have got the skills to get those messages and that content out to communities and the staff and volunteers that they're working with, so that people are being upskilled, if you like, without even realising, and they're continuing to have these really important conversations around mental well-being.
Fantastic. So you've obviously been a good take up of it so far. Has it been profitable?
Yeah, so the way it started is those that did the training have obviously got their organisations that they were keen to train volunteers and staff. So that's sort of where we initially went with it. But then as other organisations are finding out about the training, they're asking if they could host a course. So they're all in community venues where we've been delivering this training. And we're now looking at combining the voluntary sector and statutory, sort of coordinating that, so taking on the coordination of it. But I think the important thing with that is, why is it segregated? Why are we having one set of training for our public sector colleagues and one set of training for voluntary sector? Why are we not in the same room and having those conversations? Because we're all going to learn from each other. Yeah. So we're starting to look at how we can do that, which is quite exciting, really. But the voluntary sector will be taking the lead on that.
Fantastic. It's really good to see. I think it is really key to see. Just another thing then that I know obviously we were both at last week is your John in the Dots event. Do you want to? So it was a big thing. I noticed it was heavily publicised, obviously in Wigan, and you're obviously famous now in Wigan for your Grenada reports.
Give off.
Interview on television the other week. Because it really seemed to be a really good turnout, and it really seemed to be really embraced. It was an amazing day. So how did that?
Suffering.
So how did that come about then? How did you come about to lead on that? How did you join the Dots on it?
Join the Dots was a northeast and northwest tour and events, and it was led by the Jordan's Legacy from Yorkshire and Towards Zero Suicide. Two organisations run by Steve Phillip and Paul Vittles, who are very well known in the suicide prevention world all around the UK, but also in Australia as well. Tragically, Steve lost his son a few years ago to suicide. They're amazing guys, and I actually call them friends. They are friends. So when they were doing this Humber to Merseyside tour, it was the cycling tour, and they were having events in certain cities, and I was like, so you're obviously not coming to Wigan? And then they were like, well, can you do something in Wigan? And I went, well, we can put a little something on, not realising what I was saying. So they detoured to Wigan. So then I thought, right, we'll have to put something on in Wigan. Then I met Josh and Louise at Professionals of Wigan, and I mentioned to them, I'm kind of looking for a venue for this Join the Dots event. And then I realised that to join the dots, what would we do to join the dots to show how we look after Wigan? What do we do in Wigan? What do we do in Wigan to join the dots when it comes to suicide prevention and mental health? So I thought, well, the best thing to do is for us all to get together, all the organisations. So I started, contacting people and saying, do you want to get involved in this event? And actually, we need to meet and chat, and I need to get to know you, and you need to get to know me, because there's still always people that you haven't met.
Totally.
So I've got lots of new friends out of it. There's so many organisations have all discovered each other that actually, even on the day last week, were saying, I'd never even heard of them, and now they exist, and I've connected with them. And so, yeah, the whole tour was amazing. It was incredible. I was the one out of all the cities who they asked to go on Granada Reports, which was amazing for us, wasn't it? Because I came to where you are at Plattbridge, to the community zone, and because it was such a lovely day and we wanted somewhere nice in the gardens, so we did that. Yeah, it was just fab. We filmed for hours, didn't we? Obviously, I don't look good walking down a street because they didn't show any of that.
To let the bloke off for cutting his grass. That's it. Stop cutting your grass, please, mate. Please. I had to go out and speak to the guy saying,
it was
for Granada Reports.
Yeah.
They told me to stop mowing. Like, yeah, that's television. Oh, okay.
It was actually really cool though, wasn't
it?
The whole thing was amazing, and Mel is just amazing because she really loves the fact that so many people around England are, up in arms against the fact that not enough's being done about suicide prevention, and people are shouting out about it, and she's really in support of so many people. 3 Dads Walking. So the beginning of the Join the Dots tour was in Scunthorpe, of all places, at the beautiful Baths Hall, and I was speaking at that with Mike Palmer from 3 Dads Walking. So that was an absolute honour. And I had a beautiful conversation with Mike. It was lovely. So we were all there at the beginning. It was just amazing. Even at that, I met some incredible people. And, I only joined LinkedIn the other week. I was saying, wasn't I? No more. My brain can't take any more. Please, no. Anyway, I joined it. And I'm making some lovely connections on there as well in suicide prevention. But something wonderful's happening in Wigan, isn't it, with regards to suicide prevention? There are so many people connecting, and the Join the Dots event last week made me cry. I was overwhelmed. I can feel a bit emotional now because lots and lots of people turned up. I mean, Public Health, Joe and Lisa Ball, who always work with us, they just, what can you say? They support me so much. Everybody does at the council. They support us so much. People from the NHS came, people from Greater Manchester Mental Health came, Wrightington, Wigan and Leigh Trust. All these amazing people who really support Epic Hope, what we do, but want to support suicide prevention in Wigan. I was overwhelmed, I really was. Armed Forces, Laura and Sue Shearer, they're all behind us. Anthony from there, all the organisations who are behind us, Groundwork, yourselves, Directions for Men, Andy's Man Club, we're all together, we're all keeping in touch, because we know when we join the dots, when all these companies get together, all these organisations, the local authorities, the local trusts, it stops people from falling through the net. And aren't we all trying to achieve the same thing, that we don't want anybody else dying? And aren't we all trying to support each other? And isn't that the best way forward for people's mental health? Not just the public's, but for my mental health and your mental health, that we know that we want to support each other going forward. Shouldn't we be joining the dots in all areas of life? It's like Melissa and you both know, and lots of people know now because I have to say it, I've literally been staggered with I feel emotional about it. I've not been well the last few days. I had to do something yesterday for work, to do with something that I had to order, and I couldn't do it because I'm literally on brain shutdown at the moment. I'm on brain shutdown, and I'm not doing things that I should be doing because it's taken it out of me, the join the dots. However, knowing that I can just say to people like Melissa, listen, Melissa, my brain isn't working, and she instantly knows when Ellie says her brain isn't working, that means, you know, she needs leaving. All those things are so important, because and that's what I mean about the council and the public health and people like yourself. You all know, you are all a part of Epic Hope thriving, because you know that it's run by Steph, who has a full-time job as well as running Epic Hope, me, who lives with neurological issues now. That is joining the dots. So you guys are all helping us save lives too. And that is why I'm so happy that Join the Dots was such a success last week, because it's all of us.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because you're right, this is the stuff that you say there, and I think that bit you mentioned about the entrepreneur, exactly, and that because we've seen it with so many groups in the past, and I've mentioned before about some of the groups that we supported who start off as being, we're here to support whatever social enterprise idea it is, but unfortunately we've seen, and it's been hard to get through to people as to what it takes to be an entrepreneur, run your own enterprise. And you're right, and that we've seen over the years, and I've seen it myself in our building at Plattbridge, where some of these groups just, and almost like sending off, almost like start to become a service user themselves, because they're doing so much. And I've seen how it can affect families. I've heard people say, go and get a proper job, as though this is not a proper job. And it's just frustrating. And I know that's what we've always tried to say with things like the training we need to do. And obviously we're doing some work, as you all know, with Liz Douglas around step sustainability, and Liz has already said herself around things like, the emotional intelligence side of think course, because yes, we've always had over the years stuff around business support, and it's always been around traditional bits around business planning, funding, etc. That's key, but that emotional intelligence support that you're right is kind of needed, and it is hard to people to and because you're right, we just we need that support. We it's fascinating. I mean, and I know we've talked about it a lot, and as you mentioned about Laura from the Armed Forces, doing work with Laura at the minute around social impact measurement. When we start to measure the impact, which has probably been done already, etc., and we need to start, and people have been on Laura's training, and if you've been on Laura's training, they've said, oh my God, this is amazing, the training, because Laura's got it down to a T, how she can showcase it.
She's amazing.
And I just think it's great that more and more enterprises are realising, and hopefully the anchor partners, and obviously Melissa and I obviously are fortunate to kind of be able to be in some of those meetings with some of the anchor partners around the borough, just to start to say, this is making massive savings, and this is really needed, and it's keeping people locally, etc. But we need support as entrepreneurs, because we can't do it on our own, and we need that support. And I just think it's really fascinating to kind of, like you say then, and I think that, but your brain shutting down, and even I'm sitting thinking, I was like, actually that happens to me so many times. It got me thinking that it's like, maybe I need to kind of do that, because
so important.
And I never kind of, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I just put it down to myself, thinking like, oh my God, I'm inundated with so many emails and things to do, and you kind of,
But we can't be everything to everyone, can we? And our larger organisations have a HR department, they have a training department, they have a fundraising manager, and we expect individuals expect they need to be able to do everything. And why are we doing that? So I love the Join the Dots, or as I call it, Wigan Glue. Yeah. It's connecting everyone, we'll put the Wiganese in there, but it's sticking everyone together, because together we're stronger, and we can do it, can't we? And we shouldn't be working in isolation, and we shouldn't be doing everything for everyone, because we can, because we're human at the end of the day. But as Ellie said, that's about relationships, that's about people to people, that's we all care, because we're all in it for the same reasons, but it's just that human connection, and to say, okay, you can step back from this because I've got your back and there's somebody there that can pick that up. Because otherwise people are just going to crash and burn, and it's, you know, and that's happened in the past and it's going to keep happening. But together, hopefully it feels a little bit easier for people.
So in the kind of, how do I phrase this now? So in the kind of let's say a perfect day, let's say we you know, if you both have ideas on what your perfect day would be in terms of how the sector is, how obviously it is in the borough. I don't know where you were saying, if perfect day is say a 10, I don't know where you would feel things are at the minute. Would you say they're on a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Would you think on a?
I'm on a 1 starting here.
Oh, you're on a 1 at the minute, yeah. This is not this is definitely not your perfect day.
No, it's not.
But in terms of where you were after the Joining the Dots event, where do you feel? So almost like 2 questions here. One, where do you feel you are, where the borough is at the minute, where everything is at the minute on a scale of 1 to 10? But ultimately, what would your perfect day look like if you could literally just magic a wand now and say that obviously 0 suicide rates obviously would be the perfect day. It's just fascinating to kind of know where we're at now, but ultimately what do we need to do to get to that perfect day? Because clearly we're not at a perfect day. Where do you
think I mean, it's a funny one for me to answer that, because I'm grateful for every day, because I've nearly died twice. So I think every day if I'm alive, I'm so glad. So, but the Wigan Borough, I'm very. One of the things about Wigan is this: there's too many stories going out, telling people somebody's died from suicide. And there are not enough stories going out about the people that are living and that we save and that have decided to choose life. And so I think a perfect day for me would be more people hearing good news. And at the moment, there's too much bad news thrown at people who are struggling with their mental health or who are going through, you know, struggling with suicidal thoughts. So a perfect day for me is that where we can work together with maybe media and they can, you know, give out some more positive stories. That would be a perfect day for me. And currently that's not happening. I think that's how I feel at the moment.
No, that's good. And for me, some listeners, because you like I said, before your role started, it was interesting last week at the Joining the Dots event, we did the mapping exercise on the map in the store.
I love that.
I think it was 34, 35 we kind of mapped. What we don't want to do, and I would assume on a perfect day that 35 is still 35 next year. We don't want to lose any of those groups. We don't want, like we said before, we don't want that 35 just become 2 or 3 organisations, you know, taking over that kind of thing. Ideally probably want maybe more, I don't know. So in terms of where compared to say a couple of years ago when you started your work, you've obviously probably, let's say on a perfect day of collaboration and bringing those 35 groups together as an example, obviously there's way more that you support. You probably would say 2 or 3 years it probably would have been a 1 or a 2 in terms of nobody was connected, nobody was joining the dots, so you weren't connected. Clearly now, I don't know where you feel then on a 1 scale of 1 to 10 where you are now with everything.
I think we're a lot more hopeful, but there is still so much more work to be done. So I'm probably going to go somewhere middle of the road around 5. I think, as I said previously, we're understanding what groups are out there, and I think my perfect day would be that communities are starting to fix themselves. You know, that's where the ultimate goal is to get to that. But that will happen through some of the fantastic work that is happening in communities, and it's already happening in some areas, you know, really community-led initiatives. But I think, it's about, there's infrastructure that needs to happen to support that. Funding, commissioning, so kind of that funding stream, whether that's supporting, you know, the funding goes with the individual where it needs to be, so that people can access support and services at the right time when they need it, not when they're hitting crisis. And I think all too often we reach out and, you know, or we can't access a service when we really, really need it. So I think for me, the perfect day is that communities are happy, they're supporting one another, and the need for services is less and less.
And space is almost like in every neighbourhood. I know you do a lot of work with places across the borough, like the community corner. Obviously, you pretty much visit most of the key. I've always, obviously passion of our work, etc., has always been that neighbourhood working, whether that's in especially in Plattbridge, places where we're born and bred, etc. I've always said about those, people nationally call it like the 15-minute neighbourhood concept, where you've got something on your own doorstep. So for me, that's always been what it's about. I've said in many meetings around, it's great having lots of stuff going on in Wigan Town Centre, Leigh Town Centre, but I'd love to see more stuff in neighbourhoods. And I think that role that you play, like say, that kind of opportunity to work. I know you're doing lots of neighbourhoods at the minute, and for me, seeing that in every neighbourhood, so people had stuff on their own doorstep that they knew they could and it feels like there's a lot more
that's definitely
developed since you started your post compared to I know when I started looking at some of this some years ago when we were doing the Power to Change programme, it definitely felt really distant from it, but looking at your stuff, there's long days. Melissa's really connected some of these neighbourhoods.
Yeah, and I think a real passion for mine is sharing the learning. So actually, what is working really well, and that's not about sharing best practice, but it's actually like we talk about test and learn, and I hear, oh, it's okay to fail, and we've got a culture where you can admit when you get it wrong. It's not about that. It's about actually doing stuff and going, okay, we didn't get the outcome that we wanted, but what have we learned from that, and where are we going to go next with it? And I think that often doesn't happen. We see when something didn't work, but so what? Now what? And so for me, it is about sharing the learning. So where it is working really well, why is it working really well, and what did they learn on that path? So we might be able to speed up the process. Every community is different, and it's got to be led by the community. But I think if we're not sharing the learning, then we're missing a real trick, and that's where we'll learn how we can start funding and commissioning and collaborate and all of that, because we're sharing and we're being open and honest about when we've got it not quite as we wanted, but it's not a fail, it's just a learning opportunity.
And that's the beauty of collaboration as well, because you get to share not just everything that's working, but the challenges that you go through. And there's nothing better than sharing, saying, oh, that was really tough, that, and somebody else saying, do you know what, we found that tough as well, but then this happened, and it's that is the beauty of it. I think when you collaborate, or it's about trust. It's about finding those people that you trust, and we've got good relationships with Stephen Wild at MBH, and we've got good relationships with a few different people. Well, lots of different people actually. We've met a lot of people, and also people that I really look up to as well, like Laura at Armed Forces. People who we can definitely learn from, and who are willing, they're so busy, but they're willing to give you that bit of time, and it's good, it's important. It's because you might have a background, I've got a background, like I said, in international charity. Oh my gosh, you would think, wow, so she must know a lot. Oof, nothing compared to doing local stuff. It's a whole different world. And in fact, this is so much more important to me. It's absolutely, so that's fascinating, isn't it?
Because it's fascinating. Cause I know over the last many for your work, Melissa, that there's two particular on the you think about Mark at Manley and what Mark's been doing, and in terms of the role there, and of course a piece of work that I know Dion couldn't be here today, so Complete Kindness. So you're doing some work, aren't you, with Dion? Because I know when we've been to Dion's place, the amount of people, when she had the cafe back in the day, people coming in and new introductions. So I know Melissa's Dion's done some key pieces of work around this. So is there?
Yeah, so I'm working with Dion and the primary care network in West Leigh, so doing some really targeted test and learn work. West Leigh was chosen as an area, left behind communities, I think is the term that we're using these days, an area of deprivation, lots of health inequalities. The PCN, the primary care network, were really keen to look at a different way of working. But it's taken a heck of a lot of time. And again, about sharing the learning, it would be easy to say, oh, it's just all talk and no action. They just keep meeting and talking and you know, there's no activities going on yet. And there's no, but coming back to what Ellie was saying, it's about trust. It's about building the trust.
Yeah.
So, you know, some of the things we were hearing was about bringing outside people in because of some trust issues around West Leigh, which is why we brought Dion in.
Yeah.
Back to me saying, let the people that are good on the ground do the do. That, you know, Dion is brilliant at community building. From lived experience, she can connect and engage with people that I could never do. In fact, I identified that I'm useless at that kind of engagement. It's not my comfort zone. But it's again bringing the right people in. She's working with Mick, one of the community link workers. He's been sort of chosen because of his character and the way that he can engage with communities. The partnership's working really, really well. But so many lessons that we've learned, so many things that we thought and we've heard historically, we're not hearing that. We're chatting to the community and totally different things are coming out, and it's really interesting. But we've got to keep sharing what we're learning, because it's going to come time and time again, and other people will learn from it.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's a really interesting piece of work that with the West Leigh, because I think, like I said before, that there's something around the neighbourhood stuff that, you know, is so crucial. I mean, I've always said before, 25 years ago, I wouldn't be doing the role I do now if it wasn't for the fact that people in the Plattbridge community in the mid-90s got together and said, we want to save this building, but we need somewhere as a community hub, and they identified the need. They knew exactly what it was they wanted. And me living down the road, it was like, what a perfect, and it's the only job I've ever had, you know, 25 years on, and it's kind of all down to that. And if that's on your doorstep, and I've always felt over the years, you know, that the impact just through having something on people's doorstep, and how it's hopefully broken some of those cycles of multiple, deprivation, unemployment, you name it, and it's fascinating when you look at places like West Leigh as to, because I was at one of the meetings last year and on about some of the GP rates or whatever, and it's like, and somebody said, oh, we don't ever have a community centre there. It's like, well, there you go, straight away. That's the obvious answer, and it's fascinating.
It is, but we're working without that. You know, we're working with what we've got in West Leigh, you know, and it would be great to say, let's build a new community centre. Actually, is that what the community want? You know, and there was one or two, what we class as community champions, so one or two people that are doing some great stuff in West Leigh, highly respected by many, but then there's that group of people that are not engaging with health services, and you know, do they need to, you know, and we go back to communities fixing themselves. But it's like, how can we have conversations with those kind of people? And you know, so this engagement has started that, and we're identifying some potential community leaders, and I know Liz from Roots and Branches has been involved in that work as well, and looking at doing some workshops with those people to see, can they work together? Can they start to lead on this work? Because that's the ultimate, isn't it? That the community are guiding this, and that insight's informing where funding should be going. So we're not there yet. It's taking a heck of a lot of time, but through reflective practice and that learning and sharing the learning, it's quite exciting.
Yeah.
And also, when you bring in the people in the community, you know that the project or any organisation that develops, it's based on value and not vanity. Some things can be a bit of a vanity project if somebody's telling somebody else what to do, or they're doing it for a reason that's, I don't know, not based on something, or trying to get funding. Organisations need to be based on what value they've got and what value they're putting into that community as well. So if it's somebody living there, it's for them, it matters to those people, and that's what we've found with the harbours. The harbours are all in communities, and that's why they're successful, I think, because they belong to those people. Guaranteed there'll always be somebody at a harbour from somewhere else. We have found that in a few of the harbours, that someone will travel because they don't want to particularly be at a harbour in their area. But most of the harbours, they are the community led.
Where are these harbours then? Which are the community areas they're
Well,
at?
all the harbours are based in places like Aspel,
Mm-hmm.
Shevington, Springfield, Beach Hill, Ashton. The one in Ashton's at the rugby club. We're due to open one in Swinley, one in Welly. We've actually got 2 at Aspel. And every one of them, they're all community led. The facilitators are all from that community. Everyone we train is from whichever harbour they're at. They're from that place that they live. So it's because it matters to them. It's a value to them, isn't it? Yeah. So it's not just something, I'll just get involved because it looks good. No, it actually matters. It's a value to them. And I think that's the beauty of something like you just said. What do they want in that community? Do they want a community hall, or is it something that can be done, like you said, of an event maybe?
Yep.
Or because it's about those people, isn't it?
Totally. I mean, they've got green spaces within West Leigh. That's what we can use for now, you know. We're hearing they want things for families, for children. So there's loads of ideas and things that they're coming up with and things that we're thinking of and putting it to them and just having those conversations, really. So
it's getting the community to realising that they have that power to make that change. I know. You know, it's great to see, you know, it's not for everybody. I know that, you know, in Abram Ward, Standish and Goulburn, a lot have gone down the route of like doing neighbourhood planning. I know there's a lot of successful residents groups over the years, but it's amazing how many people I've seen on say social media, Facebook especially, where people have seen empty buildings or empty pubs, and it's always like, oh. And I used to say to him, like, you know, you do realise you can actually do something with these. You can actually, you know, I can't do that. So, well, why not? You know what I mean? And then when you get to people realising that there are mechanisms to save these buildings through the asset community value opportunities that come through the council and that, I've applied for a few buildings to safeguard them, to make sure that I've started to have a lot of chats in the one actually the other day around some of the empty churches, because that's a massive one that's come on our radar now. A lot of people saying we're losing our churches now. Well, that's the thing. I think
I don't know why I'm whispering.
Yeah.
I'm in a podcast. I want a church.
Well, this is a piece of work we kind of, and it seems to be more and more happening now. I know a few organisations have said to me, and I've had a few meetings with Church England and a few others to say, what do we do with some of these buildings? Because some of the ones that are, I know, for example, there's a few over in, I know certainly in Platt Bridge. I know there's a St Nat's Church, and I know there's a few in, I think they forgot the name of the one in, is it in Poolstar? Some of them obviously turned these into pantries and were massively, you know, needed during COVID. But some others have really kind of, you know, not really been utilised as such, and it's a shame really that there's been that disconnect with the community yet. Our sector, you know, so we need buildings is a massive thing at the minute. Why can't we use these? Why can't we do something in with it? So yeah, I think that'll be a really interesting thing in the next few years, which I'd like to see, which is more of those used, because, you know, I know certainly in Abram, you know, there's a bit of a conversation there around, oh my God, we're losing the church and the history behind it, and it's like, we can't afford to lose these. And like, yeah, but we can repurpose it, you know. It can be still be a church, still have the facility, but there's a way we can kind of repurpose it. And so again, it is hard to get people realising they've got that power to kind of make that change. So before we close, is there anything else you want to mention? You mentioned before briefly about a van.
So we're really excited because, as you know, we've been fundraising and we got some funding from some amazing organisations, and very soon we are getting our van ready to go out on our Hope circuits. So at the moment for Hope circuits, which is where we go out into places around Wigan and Leigh where people are known to take their lives, we regularly do interventions, which is amazing. We have been using our own cars, which we've done for a long time before we started Epic Hope, but obviously now with safeguarding, and we like to, you know, comfort people as well. We've got the van coming soon, so we're so grateful because we've been working with Rebuild with Hope in Wigan, so, and also GM System Changes funded, as well as Welcome Break. So we're very, very excited about that. So we'll look out for some photographs soon, because you'll see us. You can even, if you want to train, in applied suicide intervention skills training. You can come out with us if you want to volunteer. And save lives.
Is there information out there about this at the minute that we can
access to? We've actually got an assist training coming up on the 16th and 17th of July. That's being held at St Peter's Pavilion. You can apply now. It's actually on all our social media, on the website, and it's going in lots of bulletins this week, particularly Melissa's. So apply if you want, because there are a few spaces left. So that's really good. So we're excited about our new van.
So we'll make sure we include a link to that to the bulletin. Obviously, it's going
out this week.
We'll make sure we include it to next week's bulletin. Fantastic. That sounds amazing. And just with yourself, Melissa, obviously it's not just you and your team. We have to give a shout out to your co-colleagues.
So I work really closely with Nicola Swan, mental health transformation manager, and Hannah, nearly forgot her name then. How can I do that? Hannah Parr, who I'm not even going to say what her job title is, VCFSC Sports Integration Coordinator. So Nicola's working again with voluntary sector organisations, but specifically around mental health and transforming community services. So she's doing some fantastic work and linking in with Ellie's organisation, Epic Hope. They have the mental health subgroup, and there's some brilliant organisations that are sort of leading on that now. We are working together. We've been co-designing with a number of colleagues a relationship building event on the 9th of July. And that, as we were saying before, it's about people. So lanyards are off. It's not about organisation relationships, it's about people working together, and we're going to be sharing some stories, some lived experience stories, including my daughter's, which I didn't realise I was going to be doing, but I'm actually going to be speaking, which is a different slant on things, I guess, and that'll tell you my drive for making services better for people. And then back to Hannah and sports clubs. We identified a real gap in Wigan. Sports clubs are a valued asset within the community. They're right in the heart of communities, and there's a number of sports clubs that do their sport but are doing other things, really supporting the community and kind of widening that offer. And so Hannah's been working with clubs, again joining the dots, trying to stick everyone together, start to work in collaboration, but actually utilising the sports clubs as a community building, as we were talking sort of with churches, the same kind of thing. But again, very much community-led. What does the community want to see? So she's been working with a primary care network and the staff there. Rather than doing clinical work in a clinical space, they're venturing out into a sports club. The Ashton Bears, where Ellie's Harbour is, there's stuff going on up there around health and well-being, and really widening that offer and connecting, so it's about bringing people into those buildings that might have never thought of playing rugby, and that's not what they're going there for. But who knows, when they get comfortable with that environment and start using this building as a centre, for other activities. It might be a craft activity, a well-being, mindfulness, whatever it might be, physical activity. They might start to think, you know what, I've always wanted to have a go at rugby, and here's my opportunity. So it's a two-way thing, really, of encouraging more people to start accessing sports clubs, but for different reasons.
Because you're right, I mean, obviously one of the ones who we followed closely the last 5 or 6 years is Garswood Hall Bowling Club, and Nick Shaw there, because that always fascinated me how Nick, I used to go primary school with Nick, so obviously I've known Nick since a kid, and it was amazing when he kind of came in this sector. Then about 2018 I think it was, and he was keen to, and as I know he was a member as a child, he was a keen bowler then, and great to see the club, but then the way they brought the ball and plate in and everything there was really kind of fascinating, and it's amazing to see the impact that Nick and the rest of the team that have had over the years, and the awards they've won over the years, and that goes back to what we said before about neighbourhoods. I know where our main hub is in Plattbridge, you know, the community there has really embraced the idea of the football club recently, and the way that's transformed the community. And I know so many people now in the local community have got together, and it's like they're part of the teams, and then it's not just involved in getting the playing the sport. There's people want to get involved in grounds maintenance, or they want to get involved in every little bit of it, and that goes back to what we said before. The heart of communities is
so important,
sport at the heart of
and
it.
sports clubs crying out for volunteers. There's a real shortage historically. It seems to be the older population now that are running these clubs. The younger generation have fallen by the wayside a little bit, but you know, who's going to walk through the door? You've no idea, and you've no idea what skills those people might have. So, like you said, somebody that would really get some joy out of doing the ground maintenance that would never normally walk through the threshold. It's amazing, isn't it? Really, that they, you know, it is a real two-way thing, that the clubs can really benefit from people coming in.
That's great. That's a great piece of what you're doing. Right, so on that note, best finish it there. So yeah, thanks you, Melissa. Thanks, Ellie. Thanks for that podcast. So yeah.
Thank you for having
See you
us.
soon. Thanks so much. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.